यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिं विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगं सर्वम् यद्भूतं यच्च भूयम् उतामृतत्वस्येषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम् दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहा भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वम् व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इद्मः शरद्धभिः सप्तास्यासन् परिधजः त्रिः सप्तसमिधः कृताः देवायद्यज्ञन्तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषम् पशुम् तम् यज्ञम् बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषम् जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतम् वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागश्चक्रे वायम् यान् आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावोह जज्ञिरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावयः यत्पुरुषम् व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखम् किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य जद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागम् शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णोद्यौ समवर्तत पद्भ्याम् भूमिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः ता धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकम् महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः अभ्यः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसः परस्तात् तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनाम् पदमिच्छन्ति वेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानाम् पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मजे रुचम् ब्राह्मम् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवम् ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनम् व्यात्तम् इष्टम् मनिषाण अमुम् मनिषाण सर्वम् मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
Namaste to all. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are still on mantra 5. Tasmad virada jayata, etc. And this is a major mantra with lots of implications, and we will stay on it for a little while longer before moving on. This is the longest one as a single mantra. So the reason why this mantra is an important one and does such a elaborate job of sketching out the Shrishti, the very creation of the whole world, is because it gives you the fundamentals of the whole cosmos. Gives you the fundamentals of the cosmos in the following way. So it's several things to look into this aspect of it. One of the more important ones is that the way the creation runs, and here we use the word creation rather loosely, because the word creation immediately conjures up that there was nothing before the creation and now there is something after the creation. This is how our mind works. This is how we transact in our life when something is created out of nothingness and so on. But the idea of spending so much time on this particular verse is because we have to look at the true meaning of the word creation in the sense of the Purusha Suktam. And so this is an important point for us to really look at. So here what it means is it's a creation without someone setting it out to create it. It's a natural bhava. It's a very natural thing that there is a semblance of a creation. And so it is called anadi. Anadi means that adi yasyana vidyate, where the beginning is not really there. It is always like this. It is not as though one day there was no creation and then the next day there is creation. No, the creation has always been there. So the main thing is to see that this so-called creation is really a manifestation and an unmanifestation, which we all know this as one of the the fundamentals of Hinduism, is that there is really no such creation. It is already a vyakta avyakta. Vyakta avyakta. And so manifestation and unmanifestation. And so this is how the whole cosmos is. So this being the case, another thing to keep in mind is that the purpose of Purusha Suktam is to convey to us as mortals, as human beings, mortal human beings, to convey to us that we do exactly the same thing. So this should not be seen as something which is a concept that is not really known to us and we have to sort of put our faith into it. It isn't like that. It is a pointing out of the truth of how the world exists, manifests, and then unmanifests. And for us to be shown that we as human beings do exactly the same thing. So for us also, on a 24-hour period, there is unmanifestation and a remanifestation. Unmanifestation, remanifestation. So can you call the start of the day as a creation? You may, if you want to. You can give any word. It's up to you. You have the power to define the words as you want it. You'll say, but we never say that. You don't say that I created a new day today. People will laugh at you. What? You created a new day today? What are you talking about? So what we say is, when I woke up. Really, when I woke up is when I created the day. Okay, so one thing to understand in the study of Purusha Suktam is the complete identity of the Samashti Srishti. The Samashti Srishti means the creation of the entire cosmos, and the Vyashti Srishti, which is the microcosmic creation. Complete identity between them. The method is the same. The only difference, a very small difference, which makes such a huge difference really, is that the Purusha, who is aware of the cosmic Srishti, is not bound by it. There is no confusion in the Purusha that I am limited by the cosmic creation. There is no confusion. There is absolute fact. But for the human being, we are under the impression, which will go away if we investigate it. So they say, Dvaitam vicharam na sahate. So they say that this sense of Dvaitam means a sense of limitation. Really what it means is, Dvaita means the fact that I am imprisoned by the factors around me. Dvaitam is a nice way to say that, but really if you really explain it, what it means is that I am under the tutelage of the whole world. I am under the control of the whole world. And so this idea is what distinguishes us from the cosmic creator. I also create, but I am bound by the creation that I make. That's the difference. Otherwise, it is the same thing between how I create and how Ishvara creates, how the Purusha. Both are Purusha. Remember, the word Purusha refers to both a person. It's not a male. It's not a male. It's not a Purusha and Stri. It is a person. It doesn't matter what the gender is, but it is the conscious person who is associated with a given body and mind, and a Purusha who is identified with the whole creation. Those are the two Purusha. It turns out it's the same Purusha, as we will see more clearly later on. And but the thing is that what we have to see is that we should not look upon the Purusha Suktam as sort of understanding how Ishvara creates, but it is to understand how I create. By understanding how Purushas creates, I should understand how I create. And also, by understanding how I create, it is not a matter of just some information. You see, we have talked about this all day before. That our approach should not be, oh, I know how Ishvara creates and how human beings create. You go and tell someone. They'll say, really? First of all, the person that you're telling to, they will not believe you. What are you talking about? You have to become a real student for you to really understand this. And just talking casually to someone who's not a student will be a subject of laughter and derision even. What are you talking about? So you cannot talk to anybody like that. So it's not just information. The main purpose of identifying, or not identifying, the main purpose of understanding the identity between the cosmic creation and the microcosmic creation is this. I'm summarizing. This is all old information. The reason for doing that is to understand that the cosmic Purusha is able to create without being affected by it. That's what it is. Because if you were to create something and you are creating a problem for yourself, in fact, this is exactly what happens. Every day is a remanufacturing of problems. It all comes in slightly different sizes, different shapes, different circumstances. So this is why, sometimes Monday morning, from the days, not the days, the times when we were all busy going to office and fighting the traffic and so on, and before you got retired like me, Monday morning was the morning of blues, where you were in a bad mood. Now you have to spend a whole week working. So every day there is a new way of looking at the day. And the moment you develop this creation during the day, it means that you have to think about, what do I have to do, the plans, all the wrong things that I have, I should not be doing, I have to do, etc., etc. Those kinds of things. So we manufacture a net for ourselves, and we get imprisoned by it. So the main purpose of understanding the creation of Purusha Suktam, the creation given in the Purusha Suktam, is that, see, the Ishvara, the Purusha, the cosmic Purusha creates without being entangled in it. And we saw how this was done. If we need to understand it, we can keep studying this in more detail. But basically the example is, it is exactly like you look at your reflection. So in some ways, you can say that you're going near a reflecting surface is to create an image of yourself. It's a creation. And the creation is that you enjoy it. You can make faces. You can go into a convex mirror or a concave mirror, and one that makes you, I forget which one makes you fat and which one makes you very thin, but you can make faces at it and enjoy it. And so this is a creation where it is just a fake thing, and you're not bothered by it. In fact, it's interesting, there's so many things to talk about here, that if you look at it, the creation of Ishvara, if we just stick with it for a while before we go back to the identity between the two, which was the main subject that I started with. But if we look at the nature of looking at the mirror, what Maheshananji has pointed out in his very extensive and very deep commentary, the commentary in a lot of depth, is that, and because the depth is not because of his own thinking, but really speaking, what I find is that when there is a teacher whose commentaries really bring out a lot of depth, it is all because they have accumulated the knowledge from lots of different Vedantic texts that are consistent with each other. It is really their knowledge of being able to consolidate all this in a way which is consistent with who they are talking to. This is what teaching is all about. So when I talk about Maheshananji, it's not as though no one else did this before and he was the first one. No. He's also simply reflecting years of work, of absorption from various teachers. And if I have any effectiveness in presenting this to you, it is because I have read a lot from different sources, and my ability to soak it and to absorb it allows me to teach it in a certain fashion. All I'm saying is that all these insights that acharyas do, which I'm going to just present in a minute, is not their own ideas. In fact, this is what happens in all these commentaries. They always keep saying that this is quoted in such and such book, this is quoted by such and such person. Yes, there are from time to time new examples given, but it is a very consistent network of knowledge which has been accumulated. Anyway, going back to Swami Maheshananji's enunciation, he was saying, so if you look at this example which I'm going to say, that also was borrowed from some of the other texts. So this is such a vast subject that you can never really get tired of it. And I can just tell you from my own personal experience, when I read texts that are viewing it from various angles, but all very consistent, it is a pleasure. Anyway, Swami Maheshanji was saying that if you look at the phenomena of a person looking at the mirror, what you find is that the person looking at the mirror is not affected. Is not affected. You can make any kind of faces you like, and the mirror will amplify it or distort it, but you are not affected by it. But he is saying that even the mirror is not affected. This is a beautiful thing to see. So the mirror can have multiple reflections, either in time or in space. So in time, meaning that supposing you are looking at the mirror at 7 o'clock in the morning, when you have not got dressed up, and then you come back after taking a shower and now you've got a nice clean shirt and all that, and you're putting your glasses, and you again look at it a different way. It's the same mirror which now reflects your reflection at a different time. Or supposing your whole family surprises you and crowds around you while you are looking at the mirror from behind, and there are now 10 or 12 people, the mirror now is very crowded, but it is unfazed. As the moment those 10, 12 people go away, and even you go away, the mirror is unaffected. The reason this is the case is because the Purusha's reflection is in the Maya Shakti. Is in the Maya Shakti. Maya, it's in Maya. And this is the material. And the material is the mirror, so to speak. It is the mirror. Or it can be seen to be a apparent modification. You can look at it different ways. So for instance, there are so different ways. One of them is the reflection way of looking at it, which is what we are discussing. Or it could be that you can modify it by upadhi, where you have a room space, a small room space and a big room space, an oblong space and a cup space, a car space, all these kinds of different ones, but the space is unaffected by all of them. You can look at it that way. Or you can look at it as we did in the meditation the other day, that you have some ornaments born out of gold, or let's say you have cups made out of clay, without the clay being affected. And so here the reflection is a good example, better example than all of them. Or the avachinna. So one is bimba, pratibimba, prakriya, and the other one is avachinna. Avachinna means the one which is enclosure, apparent enclosure, as though the room is apparently enclosing the space, when in fact it is not. The space is enclosing the room. It's called the avachinna. The avachinna example is better because you have seen no change whatsoever. In the clay example, there is at least an apparent change in the clay. It's not a lump anymore, it has made. But in the other cases, it is not. Anyway, so what Maheshananji was pointing out, that look, there is no change in the Maya Shakti also. There is obviously no change in the Purusha, but no change in the Prakriti. And observe another thing. Another thing is very beautiful to observe. Every moment in the entire universe is a new one. Continuous change. And none of the new status is like before. It's a brand new, continuous new creation. Everything is changing. The whole cosmos is continuously changing. So this is yeah. So there, I was going to do this later on, but since I'm on this topic, I'll do that. This is what is called Sakriya. Sakriya means Kriya Saha Vartate iti Sakriya. Means that whatever the effect is, this is what the creation is. And it can be unpredictable, or it can be within a certain law. Like the water always boils at 100 degrees is a predictable change. But there's always some difference in location and time and so on. So this is what we call Sakriya, means that the entire creation is infinite in its variety and change. But at the same time it is Nishkriya. What is Sakriya is also Nishkriya. It is not as though the Maya Shakti is getting tired by all the change. It is too much and it wants a rest. It's not like that. So it is something like, here's a beautiful example that Swami Maheshananji had given. It is not as though you're standing in front of the mirror makes it slightly dirty, and 10 people standing along with you reflected in the mirror makes it a little bit dirtier. And you cannot, at the end of the day, 1,000 people have got to reflect. This is what happens in these restrooms, men's room and ladies' rooms. People come and go, especially if you go to a sporting event or some kind of a thing. There is a queue of people waiting to get in. And the mirror is busy. If you took a picture of everybody that gets reflected in the mirror, you are going to be tired. But the mirror never gets tired. It says any reflection doesn't matter. It leaves no traces whatsoever. So the Maya Shakti is as fresh 1,000,000 years from now as it is today, as it used to be 1,000,000 years ago. Purusha is the same and Maya Shakti is the same. Both are Anadi. What a creation. It is a creation without a creation. Here Swami Maheshananji says, and our Swami Dayananda also used to say the same thing. He said, the Shastra has some fun. It's not all serious. In fact, not at all serious. So this is what is called, in fact, this style is characterizing Adi Shankara. The Adi Shankara's commentary, Bhashya, a special word for Adi Shankara's commentary is Bhashya. Bhashya means as though it is speaking to you live. It's called Bhashya. And after a while, when you get familiar with Adi Shankara's commentary, you feel, yes, it's talking to me. It is that alive. Thousands of years ago, but it doesn't make any difference. The style of Shankara is called Prasanna Gambhiryam. Prasanna Gambhiryam. So Gambhiryam means serious, weighty. This is not just fluff. Really speaking, to provide you information where you can become immortal. You are a mortal today, and right while you are mortal, you become immortal. What an amritam this is. It is not drinking amritam for later use. Really speaking, the moment you understand the truth about yourself, you are free. It is that kind of an amritam. So it is very gambhiryam, but serious, but a very pleasant serious. It is called Prasanna Gambhiryam. This is the style of Adi Shankara. And I would say the same style for the entire Shastra. So the Shastra, according to our acharyas, also has some fun with us. And the fun is to provide us with completely contradictory statements. In fact, Swami Tattvavidananda ji, that some of you may know, he used to say that. He says, if you understand the contradictory nature of the sentences that Shastra provides, you really understand Shastra. So, for example, in the Shavasya Upanishad, all over, it says, Anejam ekam, anejat ekam manaso javiya. He says that standing still without moving, it moves faster than the mind. What a contradictory statement. Then there is another one in Kathopanishad. Bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest. I was telling you this in some of the students that when the British were ruling India, and they all thought this is Indians are just heathens. They are non-Christians. They don't understand the Christianity. They don't understand Christ. They don't understand the finer things of life. These are just an old, stupid civilization. But there are some people who thought, oh, these Upanishads are saying something really good. I think we should understand it. So with this background, there was, this is well recorded in history. I forget the names of the people anyway. That one English philosopher went to India and said, are there any scholars that know Upanishads that can teach me? And they have to be able to communicate to me in English and so on. Well, there's lots of people, so somebody said, okay, I'll do it. So he started reading this. And in the Kathopanishad it says, the one which is bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest. And he said, stop. I don't need to be taught anymore. So he said, why? What happened? He says, I'm going to write an article, you read my article. He went back to UK and he wrote an article that these are the prattlings of an infantile culture. You are absolutely right. These guys don't know what they're talking about. They are just babbling for nothing. And so this is exactly what the contradictory statements in Shastras talk about. fact of the matter is, what the contradictory statements are saying, that if it is something like this, then it is Sakriya and Nishkriya. And not only that, it is at a higher level. So when you say something which is larger than the largest and smaller than the smallest, it is referring to the content of both of them. Like in the sea, the water is the content of the largest wave. So naturally, the largest wave draws from the water, so the water is even greater than the largest wave. And the smallest foam particle, the water is there. So it is something at a higher level than both of them. So it appears like that. It appears to be the truth. In fact, in the Dakshinamurti Stotram, which some of us read, just finished it just a couple of months ago, very beautiful 10 verses. We spent a lot of time on it. In the very first verse it says, Vishwam Darpana Dashyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantar Gatam Pashyan Atmani Mayaya Bahirivo Udbhutam Nidraya Yat Sakshat Krute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanam Eva Advayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Shri Dakshina Murtaye. So that's exactly pointing out the same thing. That wow, the small mirror, when it's placed on the outside of a house, and all the entire town's activities, it reflects. If there is a bus coming, it reflects the bus. If there is a pedestrian which is moving around, it reflects it. So much hustle and bustle it reflects. But there is nothing inside of it. Nijanta antargatam. And he says, Atmani mayaya bahirivo idbhutam nidraya. So just like a dream also, it looks as though it is outside, but there is nothing outside. Beautiful example. So in fact, this is how, going back to the original topic of identity, the creation, the continuous manifestation and non-manifestation of at the cosmic level is exactly the same at your and my level, where I withdraw everything into myself in deep sleep. Nothing is visible, nothing is affected, only ignorance, I don't know, exists. Were you there as a conscious person? Yes. I was conscious. What were you conscious of? Nothing. So just imagine there are these two factors. I am conscious, but ignorance means nothing. That's it. It goes back to bijam. It goes back to the seed state where nothing is manifested. Everything is linam. Linam. It just goes into a non-manifestation. And in the Chandogya Upanishad, there is a dialogue between the student and his father. And so the father says, so he says, I don't understand, how can you say something that has become invisible? doesn't happen. How can you become invisible like you are invisible at night? Where did everything go? He says, nothing, it didn't go anywhere because it is just withdrawn. He says, I don't get it. So he says, okay, do this. Just bring a vessel of water and go bring a salt rock, some salt rock, and put it into this vessel. Water, fill it up with water and put the rocky salt into it, and close it off, and then don't disturb it. And next morning we will see what happens. So the next morning he says, open the cupboard, look at the salt, and do you see the salt? He says, no, it's all become water. He says, now taste the water. So he tastes it and he says, yes, it is salty. So he says exactly the same way. The entire world is withdrawn into yourself. So you see, this is what the Atma, remember we did the definition of the Atma, which says, Yatcha apnoti, one which withdraws everything. But the tasting of it means there is ignorance. I don't know what it is the salt. But the vikshepa, that is the avarana, the hiding of it is called the avarana. With the vikshepa was not there. Vikshepa means it projects into something which looks solid. So this is how it would be like a rock of the salt. But when it is withdrawn into the water, it becomes invisible. So anyway, it points out, going back to our original theme, that the purpose of the 5th verse of the Purusha Suktam is to say how the creation is projected and withdrawn by Ishvara without any effect on the Purusha or the Maya Shakti. Both of them remain unaffected. Like a person looking at the mirror is unaffected by things in the mirror, and the mirror by the reflection also is unaffected. And so are you, my dear. Purusha Suktam is saying, don't look upon this as just some information. See that you are creating and uncreating without any effect on you. Here, Swami Maheshananji was pointing out that one time, this is an important meditation, way of meditating. So I do this very often. It's very, very useful to me. Adi Shankara was teaching his mother and was saying that, Mother, do you know how many kids you have had in your entire creation? Not just in one life. You have been mother or father, a guardian of millions of kids. Where is your concern for them? They're gone. They're gone. So don't you see that you were somebody who was there even before you became a mother? In fact, before you became a child, In fact, before you were a fetus, you were somebody. And then your identification with the family, first as a child, then as a mother, came about. And it will go again, keeping you unaffected. So all of the families and concerns that we have, and responsibilities and worries and fears, and all of that is really very temporary. Should you not be looking at something which is your own independent entity, where you are unaffected by it? So in this, I don't know if you ever spent time on this. So here, so the first line of this definition of Atma that I had shown you, I still have that card from it. Yatcha apnoti. Yatcha apnoti yad adatte. So adatte means project out. So when you leave the deep sleep, you now have two kinds of projections. One is through purely out of your mind, and the other one is in connivance with the outside world. So one is swapna avastha, one is jagrata avastha. This is a projection. This is what you project. And what kind of a projection is it? It is like seeing your own reflection in this mirror with no effect on you whatsoever. And then one was Yatcha apnoti yadadatte yatcha atti vishayan iha. Leaving aside that, let us go to the second line. Yatcha asya santato bhava. Santato bhava. This is what Adi Shankara was saying. Don't you see my mom, my dear mother? You are so concerned about me. This is all a play. You are no longer concerned with millions of such offsprings that you have had. Where are they? You don't even know, you don't care. You are only concerned about something that is visible right now. This is what they said is in the 6th verse of Dakshinamurti Stotra. Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarva svavastha swapi yap pratyabhigyayate. I'm not taking the whole verse. Balyadishu jagradadishu tatha sarva svavastha api. Same. So this is the interesting thing we should see about this. This is what distinguishes. See, the entire creation is the same as between Ishvara and myself, but there is a distinction. I don't get it, and the Ishvara gets it. That's it. And I can get it. I can understand it. So here, balyadishu jagradadishu tatha means that if I just understand the significance of the saying when I was young, santato bhavaha, yatcha asya santato bhavaha, one which is the same. You see, you cannot even make the statement that I was young unless you are the same person then and the same person now. Shouldn't we see this? We should see this. It is exactly like a gold saying, when I was a ring and now I am a different ornament. Now I am a garland. or a bangle, not a garland. Nobody makes a gold garland. So I used to be a ring, and now I am a bangle. Is it the true statement? The same gold was there as a ring, same gold is there as a bangle, even though the upadhis are all different, sizes are different, functions are different. Same thing happens when we say, when I was young. I don't understand why we don't get it. This is amazing. It is because, you know why we don't get it? I'll tell you why. Because we are too concerned about our name and form and not about the content of the name and form. That's all it is all about. We're not concerned about that. If we start looking into it, amazing things will happen. So Swami Maheshananji was pointing out, although I think I may have given you this example last time also, that it all depends on your drishti, the way you're looking at it. So for instance, I think I gave you this example, forgive me if this is a repetition, that somebody's daughter in India getting married, and the husband and wife, they both say, I think we can afford maybe 30 grams of gold. So now they can go to a jeweler along with the daughter and say that we are looking for something around some amount of money, this much, please show us. And we are looking for a necklace for her, golden necklace. So when you are doing that, you tell the jeweler that 10% weight this way or that way doesn't make any difference, but we want an approximate idea. So now your drishti is all towards the design. So that's where, for example, I'm just being sexist about it. So you have a mother and a father and a daughter. So the father has already decided that this is how much we can afford. And he's not too concerned about the design. He lets the mother, the wife and the daughter, kind of decide that. He's actually bored about it. He takes out his iPhone and he's looking at all those kinds of things while they are arguing about, no mom, this is better, no daughter, this is better. And so the entire drishti is based on the ornamentation. And they make a deal and they come back. And then suppose that it was decided that, we need to, this is uncertain time, this is happening now. Just the other day, one of my wife's friends' housekeeper for a friend of my wife, she went to say hello to her friend, and her housekeeper was saying, Madam, I am told we should withdraw all the money from the bank. Why? Because these notes it's very possible that it may be useless, like happened in demonetization. Swami Maheshananji says this, it's interesting if you look at before the independence in 1947, the British had their own, I wasn't aware of it, even now I don't know, there was an Indian currency. It was an Indian currency with the Queen's picture, King's picture, and so on and so forth. And after a while, that whole currency became useless. Now you can still have it. You can still look at the King's picture. It looks exactly like it did before. It has no value whatsoever. Anyway, that's a separate topic. We'll go over that some other time. But anyway, so now there was a case where people had to cash in their notes and get some real gold. Now, if you go to the same jeweler now and say, can you please take this paper money and give me gold instead? So you ask, and the jeweler says, yeah, I think I can do that, but do you want any design on it? He says, no, I have nothing to do with design. Don't waste my time. I just want gold. So this is the drishti. The drishti is when you're not looking at, and our problem is, this is what I was saying earlier. So when we say when I was young, I am thinking all the way about what I used to be when I was young and what I am now. And maybe I'm happier, maybe I'm not. Doesn't matter, it all depends on which way you're looking at it. But you're only concerned about your state of being. And you disregard the continuous person, the continuity of the person you disregard. I'm reading I believe the 14th chapter of Panchadashi these days. 14th chapter. And Panchadashi is just a beautiful book. Especially if you are Hindi speaking, if you can get the commentary of Swami Maheshanandji on it. This is a powerful combination. I've mentioned this to you before. Amazing clarity about how the whole Shastra presents itself. So in that discussion, this point is brought up, and I really, just looking at some of the words used in the discussion, it was very revealing to me. Very revealing to me. What was revealing was, there is a word that Swami Vidyaranya uses, which in Sanskritam is called avagya. Avagya. Avagya means closer to disrespect than insult. It is somewhere in between. But let's say disrespect, not an outright insult. And the reason I say that is because there is a distinction. The distinction is that supposing there's a couple of people who came in to meet with you, and you insulted a person, consciously insulted a person. So that probably doesn't happen all that much. But what can happen is that out of the two people, I find this is a very interesting thing. I find this this happens all the time. If there are two or three of us, there is a person, for whatever reason, they fix their gate at one person. They don't look at the other person at all. This is a fascinating thing. If I go with my wife or somebody else, and somebody is only talking to me, completely disregarding her, or the other way around, if she's the only one that the person is talking to, even though the topic is general. So this is what is called disregard. Disregard. You don't a complete insult, but it's a kind of a soft insult. So this word is called avagya. I think I need to wrap up, pretty soon. So this is a word used by Swami Vidyaranya, avagya, an important concept. What he says is that an ajnani, a person who doesn't know, is so focused on the design that you disrespect the goal. Disrespect it. You do avagya to the content, to the santato bhava. Avagya means you just ignore it. And what we have to do in our life is just the opposite, which we will talk about, the very process of doing so. But the end result is that we need to slowly recognize the importance of the content, and you slowly results in the avagya towards the name and form, the design. It is called vairagya. We have to do vairagya, and it can only be done if you study and become wise, because a goal is much more important than the design. That's what we have to see. And ultimately what we have to see is that this goal that we are talking about, which is Samvit, the Sakshi, it's an amazing goal, nothing like anything else in the world. There is no change, there is complete joy, but I have to appreciate it. Right now I am insulting it by disregarding it. Avagya, beautiful word. When Swami Maheshananji explains this in the 14th chapter, it's really worth reading. I love this word, avagya. Avagya means that it is, you are just ignoring it. It's like a very important person who's come into the room, and you either deliberately, and usually doesn't happen deliberately, but unknowingly just ignore that person. Yeah, the Atma is right here. Paramatma is with you, is you, but you ignore it. Funny situation. Anyway, I'm going to I'm going to finish the class. In fact, I was thinking of doing it a little bit earlier, but it's already 9 o'clock, so it's not any earlier, because I'd like to take up an answer to a question from Sam Dillon, which I will do after the closing prayers. And so let me answer that after. So we'll continue with this next time. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So instead of looking at the questions that you have in your chat window, which I have been doing recently with other classes, I invite you to maybe send me a more detailed question by email, and if I find that it has some general applicability, then I will answer that, and if time remaining, then we can go to some of the other ones. So this is a question from Sam Dillon, who lives near Houston in a place called Spring, Texas, and he has a yoga Om Loka Yoga place. I don't know whether it's a regular one where other people come in to learn from him, or I'm not quite familiar with the setup. But anyway, he writes the following, and it stems from the last meditation that we did a week ago, where I happened to mention, I think as part of the meditation, the distinction between concentration and absorption. You remember, if those of you that were there, that I talked about, that in Vedanta, we follow a process of the absorption of the mind more than the concentration. So this is the background. So Sam writes to me, I have some questions about concentration and absorption. In my studies of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali regarding the 8 stages, the limbs of yoga, the last 3 limbs are dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. That is correct. The 3 together are called samyama. Dharana is sometimes referred as concentration, dhyana as meditation, and samadhi as absorption. The definition of dharana is focusing the mind on one thought. Dhyana is when the focusing becomes effortless. The attention is no longer wandering away, but becomes effortlessly steady, and samadhi is absorption. How does this definition compare to Vedanta, that concentration is absorption? This is the question. Good. Happy that you asked that, and this is a very important question because it goes to the very heart of the distinction between the samadhi talked about in the Patanjali Sutras, or the vision of yoga. Yoga is a school of thought, and also so the vision of the yoga and the vision of Vedanta. How are the two different or similar? So this needs quite a bit of background. I'm not sure that we will complete it today, but I'll start on it and give you some ideas for it. So the meditation in Vedanta, let me just talk about that first. Because that's what I'm mostly familiar with. I don't follow the Patanjali Sutras. I have studied it to a certain degree. I understand, I think, the essence of it from my own teacher. And sometimes, quite frankly, I think I mentioned this to in the last class. I would say there are 2 things involved. One is one's own understanding. This topic came up in the class on Mandukya Karika. Something similar. Let me just digress for a second to make this particular point. And there is a student by the name of Kirsten Strian from Italy, and she asked this question, and I think Sam has also asked a similar question. Why is there so much dukkha, so much sorrow, so much problems in life? Why is Ishvara? How can we reconcile that Ishvara's kind nature and so on? That was the question. So I won't have time to answer that question. If you are interested, you can look at the question answers from last week's Mandukya Karika. And if you like, I can answer that in this class as well. But what I am pointing out is, in the answer to Kirsten's question, is that I do find a distinction between what one understands from this teaching and how one communicates it to others. There's a distinction between them. Is this means that you are speaking from two sides of the same? Why can't it be the same? How can you make a distinction? The reason is that in Vedantic study, we start with the fundamentals and slowly become more and more subtle. And so at an advanced stage, the teaching becomes more subtle and very not easy to understand. It is just like any other subject, not just Vedanta, any other subject. So if you're looking at advanced mathematics, you do not start with all kinds of complicated equations in the very beginning. You first start with 1 + 1 = 2. It was interesting, when my granddaughters were born, I could see how the mind progresses. At one point in time, you tell them how much is 1 + 2, and they'll say, what are you talking about? I don't understand this. So you say, I gave you 1 apple and then 2 other apples. How many do you have? You say, I don't understand what you're saying. So don't you see that? Anyway, I'm just going around. But you start with arithmetic, geometry, calculus, and slowly you progress to a point. So now, if you are teaching it to someone, you have to assess where that person is and not dump it on that person straight away. This is the question I have. So please keep that in mind as well. Having said that, I hope I'm not really insulting anybody or anything. But from a Vedantic standpoint, the Patanjali vision is not complete. Not complete. We don't study it. Now, having said that, the methods used in understanding the Samadhi are very useful in Vedanta. But the final goal is different. I'll tell you why. I'll just say that for a little while and then I'll go back to the methods to answer Sam's question. So what happens is that in the way our understanding of the Patanjali Sutra is that if you are in Samadhi, according to the Patanjali's use of Samadhi, which is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, absolutely no thoughts, you are just with yourself, by yourself, which is very pleasant and very nice and could be very similar to what the Vedantic vision is. But then when the thoughts come back, as they will, as soon as because you cannot sit in Samadhi forever, you have to go to the bathroom sooner or later, or you have to be hungry, thirsty. So thoughts come back. Now where's the nearest bathroom? Thought. This is an intrusion in the Samadhi. Why? Because thoughts have not been seen to be mithya. So the real Samadhi is either with thoughts or without thoughts, doesn't matter. This is the real Samadhi according to Vedanta. But if the Samadhi that we talk about is simply no thoughts, without having done the work to see what the Satyam and Mithya is, this is called Andha Samadhi, blind Samadhi. And it creates problems. So for that reason, our understanding of Patanjali's Samadhi is that it is incomplete and really not worth doing. This is how I'm just telling you this. But I'm not going to go outside and say this to everybody that comes in, because there's no need for it. Now, I'm not just telling everybody, hey, this is all full of you know what. No. You just stay at whatever level you are and try to understand it. And if you don't, then you're you can do whatever you want. Now, having said that, let me go back to the question that Sam used. So in what I was saying, Sam, was that in Vedanta, having a disciplined mind where you're not going around different places and so on and so forth is important. And so in the preparation for meditation that we did asana, and then I would say concentration, but just looking at the sense of touch, etc., and then just looking at the body and so on and so forth. What happens is, I would classify this as a pull mechanism rather than a push mechanism. You see, I consider, in our way of defining it, concentration as a push mechanism. Only think of one thought. Well, various thoughts come in. No, I don't want many thoughts, just one thought. You keep on doing, this is a push. We think a pull is more important, where you are just looking at your breath. And if you are slowly looking at your breath, which we didn't do in our meditation, it's one of the stage number 3 or 4 or so, the mind automatically stays with the breath and doesn't jump around. So you pull it back to it. Okay, so this is number 1. The more important thing I want to convey, Sam, is that in the Vedantic meditation, the knowledge of Atma and Anatma has been exhaustively done prior to it. Not just a casual, this is what we are doing. Examples of reflection, of avachinna. You have to look at it from every angle, because the mind needs a lot of convincing. Our minds, even though they are irrational, it's very rational. It says, no, I don't understand any of that. So I'm just going to keep behaving the way I'm knowing. So you have to give it more vidya, more fodder, more knowledge to say, now don't you understand? And it will say, no, finally say, yeah, that's right, I didn't know that. When that happens, this is from Shravanam and Mananam. Nididhyasanam comes much later. And so then when you are doing meditation, what you are doing is not removal of thoughts, but the appreciation of the fact that thoughts are not damaging to me. I am something different from thoughts. And the thoughts are really nothing but my own manifestation and my own reflection. That absorption, that is called absorption. So you dwell on your thoughts based on your own understanding of the Shastra. So it is a completely different process from the Patanjali's Samadhi. So this is what we call absorption. Yes, in the beginning, if you use some of the Patanjali methods to calm your mind down, I think this is okay. We are not opposed to it. But in substance, the more important thing is the honoring, the avagya. The avagya means that you don't disregard it. You say, my God, I was never born. I didn't appreciate it. That I was a child and I am now an old man. I'm the same person, unaffected by both of them. Oh my God, I didn't understand that. This is just incredible. This is what one has to understand. And the meditation is simply a method to accelerate that understanding, which has already taken place through your studies, but never really put together to give you the final answers. Let's see who's calling. Ah, no. Anyway, I hope this gives a comprehensive answer. If not, then Sam, write to me and I can answer that again. So what I can do is 9:17. Let me see if there are any other questions that I can quickly answer. So questions from Ramanan and from Krishna Ryan. I think it requires more time. So if with your permission, let's postpone it. I will recall these questions and we'll answer them next time. So they're pretty good questions and I'll be happy to answer them a week from today. So with that, I close today's class. All the best to you. Namaste.